Good morning, everyone. Good morning. For those of you who don't know, my name is Tony Fisher. I am the minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples. I have numerous responsibilities, which I'll share over time. But this morning I'd like to welcome you here and let you know that this is a welcoming congregation. Whether you're a visitor here for the first time, maybe the third time, or whether you've been here for ages and ages, it seems, I bring you the warmest of welcomes. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples is a welcoming religious community where each of us is encouraged to grow spiritually in fellowship with others by joining in worship and celebration, education, reflection, and discussion. And we strive to do all this in the spirit of acceptance and love and commitment to one another, offering mutual support in times of need. We invite everyone, especially the newcomers, to join us after the service for refreshments, coffee, tea, and some goodies on the patio or next to the kitchen. And as we begin our Sunday service, I urge you to check your mobile devices of any size and see that they're turned, as one person has said, to a more reverent setting. Please know that there are some additional copies of the sermon in the back in case you should need that. They ended up on the piano. Somebody, I don't know who, left them there instead of out front, so sorry about that. And now let us begin our morning's worship. Welcome to this place of possibility. This is love's hearth, the home of hope, a refuge for minds in search of the truth unfolding, ever beautiful, ever strange. Here, compassion is our shelter, freedom our protection from the storms of bigotry and hate. In this place, may we find comfort and courage. Here, may our sight become vision to see the unseen, to glimpse the good that is yet to be. Let us rise in body or spirit and sing together hymn number 128. There are a few people who have done some practicing before the service who will stand in the aisles and help us along, so I urge them to come forward, and we'll start. 128. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise, for all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. Please be seated. We light our chalice this morning in celebration of the inherent worth and dignity of every person, reaffirming the historic pledge of liberal religion to seek in love that justice which transcends mere legality and moves towards the resolution of true equality. Let's join together in the chalice lighting words that are found in your order of service. We light this chalice flame, symbol of our liberating faith. Our children and youth come back next Sunday to join us in the sanctuary for the first time in this church school year, so we'll look forward to that. But I do have a story for you again this morning, just in case. For me, anyway. Once upon a time, a father lay on his deathbed, despairing of the fate of his lazy sons. And near his final hour, an inspiration came to him, and he called the sons around his bedside and bade them to draw close. "I am soon to leave this world," he whispered. "And I want you to know I have left a treasure behind in the fields. Dig carefully, and you shall find it. I only ask that you share everything among yourselves." Well, the sons begged him to tell them exactly where that treasure was buried. But the father breathed his last breath and spoke no more. And as soon as their father was buried, the sons took up their pitchforks and shovels and began to turn over the field that their father had always tilled. They dug and dug until they'd gone over the whole field twice, and they found no treasure. But they decided that since the field was well turned over, they would plant a crop of grain. The grain grew well for them, and after the harvest, they decided to try their luck again at finding the buried treasure. Again, they found nothing but a field prepared for sowing. That year's crop turned out to be even better than the first. And this went on for a number of years until the sons had grown accustomed to the cycles of the seasons and the rewards of daily labor. By that time, their farming had earned them each enough to live a happy life, and it was then that they realized that the treasure their father had left them was in the field themselves. This is a time in our service where we have an opportunity to share with each other the joys and sorrows that we carry with us each day. I hope you remember that we share these sorrows and joys in confidence during this time. Joy and sorrow is woven fine. So let's remember to keep our comments from the heart and as brief as possible. Please raise your hand if you have a joy to share. State your name and tell us what's in your heart. Thank you. For comings and goings, for new directions, for departed pets of any variety. We hold these thoughts in our hearts and all those thoughts that have remained unspoken, those things we carry with us each and every day. Let's remain seated and join in singing hymn number 352, Find a Stillness, as we move into a time of meditation. Please join me in the spirit of meditation. Let us celebrate the common rituals that make us kin. The poignancy of welcome and farewell, the anguish of defeat, the tender touch of those who call us friend, the exuberant joy of birth, the empty space in our hearts when a loved one dies, the ultimate loneliness that each knows, the warm embrace of comrades who welcome us to the celebration of life, the questions that persist and perplex and do not yield to our need for answers, the shining moments when the sun slants across our dim, meandering path, illuminating the way, the strange and anxious excitement of moving on to new places to call home, the fragments of frustration when our best efforts yield pitiful results, the helplessness we feel in a world that sometimes presents only problems, the high joy when some small victory for humanity is won and we have helped make that happen. In all our moments of doubt and despair, of problem and pain, let us remember the common lot shared by our human kin. In all our times of truth and triumph, of faith and fortitude, let us celebrate what we share. We are, after all, in this together. Let's share a minute of silence together. Amen. I invite you to turn in your hymnals to responsive reading number 567, To Be of Use by Marge Piercy. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who stand in the line and haul in their places, the work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held the corn are put in museums. But you know they were made to be used. And like every week, we have an opportunity to express our gratitude for the work of this church and its wonderful community. I hope that you will take advantage of this opportunity to show what this church means to you as we collect the morning's offering. The second reading this morning is from the book, How Much Do We Deserve? By Richard Gilbert. There is a conflict between America's religious faith in economic justice and the workings of the market. We are told by every religion and philosophy known to humankind that material acquisition is not the pursuit of happiness. But the marketplace gives us the opposite message. What kind of theology can address this dilemma? My own theological framework is founded on the idea that there is a power beyond ourselves, one that functions in the cosmos as creation, in nature as creative evolution, and in humanity as history. Moreover, we as humans live with and strike bargains with this power. A purely utilitarian ethos does not do justice to the power that gives us life and being, nor does such an ethos recognize those values that transcend the workings of the marketplace. My first job was as a lowly sales clerk in the Filene's department store at the nearby mall in Burlington, Massachusetts. I worked there full-time for about a year between 1969 and 70, in between the time of finishing high school and not quite being ready for college. I earned a whopping $2.32 an hour. In addition to my financial rewards, I learned a lot about people at that first job, the people I worked with, the people I served, the customers who came through the door and were always right, even when I knew they weren't. I think I actually learned a lot more in that year than I did in the next few years of college combined. I can remember looking at my first week's paycheck and thinking that the $65 or so of take-home pay was a pretty big deal. Of course, through a good chunk of that time, I was living at home, not paying any rent, not contributing to the family budget in any way. All I had to do was put some money away for college expenses and pay for gas and maintenance on the little Fiat 850 coupe that my parents had bought me to get around. So, yes, let's put it up on the table right up front. I come from a privileged background, born and raised in white middle-class America in the 50s and 60s. I had no clue then, and in fact, I had no clue for a long time what that privilege bought me. I didn't even understand at the time that the $2.32 and the paid time off that went with it was a gift from the men and women who had fought hard some time before to unionize the retail industry. Well, it turns out that paycheck was indeed a pretty big deal. Without the union, I would have likely been offered the minimum wage, which in 1970 was $1.60 an hour. And when that wage was established 2 years earlier, in 1968, it marked the high water mark for the minimum wage in terms of its buying power, ever. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, $1.60 earned in 1968 would be the equivalent of $10.95 in today's economy, which would almost be enough income to lift a family of four with one breadwinner out of the 2014 poverty level of $23,850 a year. Unfortunately, in 2014, a worker earning the federal minimum wage only makes $7.25 an hour, which translates to $8,770 a year below the poverty line for a family of four. I don't know if you saw it in the news, but for a week last month, former Ohio Governor Ted Strickland tried to live on the budget of a minimum wage worker. It was a non-scientific experiment, of course. He didn't even try to work in his housing into the equation. As he tells it, For a week, I walked as much as I possibly could to avoid paying for transportation, skipped meals to save money. I ate much smaller and less healthful meals when I did eat. And because fresh fruits and vegetables are hard to find at a price within the minimum wage budget, I turned to bread, peanut butter, bananas, and bologna more than anything else. That was what I could find when I took this budget to the grocery store on the first Sunday. And that's why I ate lunch from the McDonald's dollar menu. He reports that he caught cold early in the week and used some medicine he already had on hand. And still, discounting housing and medicine, he didn't make it through 5 days. Of course, it's not an experiment for a lot of people. Mike Gattero earns the minimum wage cleaning airplanes at the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. And even though his wife earns a little in a part-time job, they still can't keep up with the rent or the bills or provide enough food for their 3 children. Mark cringes every time he puts gas into his car that takes him to and from the airport, because it takes away from other things. I have no health care, he says. I don't have anything. We have no way to save. As much as you have to spend more, and it's still not enough. How is it that our government, of the people and by the people and for the people, could establish a minimum wage that doesn't even meet our own metrics for a decent standard of living? The practical answer is that for some reason the minimum wage has never been tied to an economic index so that it could move relative to the cost of living. Thus, the rate has been subject to politics, which, as we all know, is not the most consistent method for rational decision-making, especially in our current times. Back in 1981, Congress froze the minimum wage at $3.35 in an attempt to fight inflation, despite the fact that the cost of living was still rising. After that, it wasn't bumped up again until 1990, by which point the minimum wage had fallen well below the poverty level for a 2-person household. Between 1997 and 2000, the minimum wage was once again frozen, this time at $5.15. And once again, the cost of living continued to climb. The federal minimum was bumped up incrementally between 2007 and 2010, arriving at the current $7.25, where it's been for 4 years, while, you guessed it, the cost of living has risen even faster than before. Individual states, including Florida, have taken advantage of the power granted them to raise the minimum wage above the national level. Florida has even taken the additional step of tying the hikes in the minimum wage to the annual consumer price index. President Obama has proposed the federal government push beyond these state increases to raise the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour, still below the buying power that people in 1968 had. But even that rate of $10.10 isn't enough. NPR reported this week that the Florida minimum wage of $7.93 is only half of what is truly needed to meet the poverty level. I don't know about you, but I can't imagine trying to raise a family of 4 on $23,000 a year. As important as it is, debates over the minimum wage are really only part of the story. And sometimes I think all the rhetoric shifts our attention away from what should be our real concern about what constitutes a good job and a fair wage on both ends of the spectrum, and what kind of response we should be making as a people of faith in an era of rising inequality. The 2011 study by the Congressional Budget Office found that the average household after-tax income grew by about 62% between 1979 and 2007. But it doesn't take a degree in economics to see that the distribution of that growth is terribly lopsided. The top earning 1% of households increased their income by about 275% after federal taxes, compared to the gain of just under 40% for the next 60% of America's income earners. Income for the bottom quintile, the bottom 20%, increased by only 18%, hardly enough to keep up with the standard of living. This is the kind of data that prompted the Occupy movement in 2011 to sit and occupy Wall Street. And the growing inequality in our country has been reaffirmed over and over since then. In 2012, the Associated Press reported that the gap between the richest 1% and the remaining 99% was the widest it had ever been since 1920. And in 2012, incomes of the wealthiest 1% of the population rose nearly 20%, while in that same year, the remaining 99% of the population experienced only a 1% rise in income. As the reading from Richard Gilbert reminds us, every religion and every philosophy known to humankind tells us that material acquisition is not the pursuit of happiness. But our economic system preaches something completely different. Our own Unitarian Universalist principles hang just outside this sanctuary, as they do in many congregations across the land. They represent a covenant that we have made to one another as a people of faith. But that covenant is not worth the paper on which it's printed unless we put them into action both here within these walls and outside into the wider world. And it is then, when you actually begin to internalize these principles and live them faithfully and consistently day after day, that you realize that our Unitarian Universalist faith is a demanding one. When I look at the principles, I start at the end. The seventh principle says that we affirm and promote a respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Science, evolution, and history all tell us that we are connected. What we do as individuals, how we treat ourselves and each other and the earth, sends ripples far beyond our understanding. Everything we do, every choice we make impacts our environment. Ethicist Daniel McGuire has argued that the fundamental moral experience is that that of our experience of ourselves and our planet in the universe. Let me say that again. Daniel McGuire argues that the fundamental moral experience is our experience of ourselves and our planet in the universe, and that all ethics can be derived from that sense of connection we have to see when we are aware. From there, it follows that if we are to live this connection, the first Unitarian Universalist principle, which holds up the inherent worth and dignity of every person, must come into play, whether or not you take it as a fact or live it as a choice. And if we are to promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, we need to ask what we are called to do when some in our community are not treated as equals in the fight to live a decent life. People who just seek enough to make it through, who want to be of use. The first principle precedes the second, which calls us to promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And again, this can't be a theoretical statement that simply hangs on the wall, something we say occasionally in church. It's not a statement of belief. It's a guideline for ethical living, something we affirm and promote, as are all these principles. And what I'm saying is that the status quo of poverty in this country and low wages is something to which each of us needs to attend. 50 years ago, in January of 1964, Lyndon Johnson called for a war on poverty. And while some studies suggest that poverty rate has decreased over the last half century, much of that has to do with governmental programs such as food stamps and unemployment insurance, which have indeed made a significant progress in easing the plight of the poor. But researchers at Columbia University suggest the nation's economy has made far less progress in lifting people out of poverty without the need for those governmental services. Today, more than 46 million people in America live below the official poverty level. 46 million people. And almost a quarter of those people could be classified as working poor. Folks like Mark Gatterow, who have jobs, who want to work, but still who can't make sufficient income to make the ends meet. This is not a political issue, and it's not an economic issue. And it's time we stop debating it as such. Each side can twist the numbers to make their argument 6 ways from Sunday and leave us doubtful and confused. But there is no getting around the fact that this is a moral issue. When the top 100 CEOs in the United States make a combined salary of over $3 billion, the top 100 CEOs make a combined salary of over $3 billion. When any one of them makes more in just 2 hours than someone making the minimum wage can make in a year, we have to stop and begin asking who we are as a people and start talking about where we want to go. As people of faith, we are called to respond to the plight of our fellow human beings. Sometimes we feel we have limited ability and limited resources to make a difference, but I beg to differ. Doing nothing is acquiescence. It doesn't take much to start. Go to the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee website, uusc.org, and sign the statement on minimum wage co-sponsored with the UUA. Send a postcard to your representatives asking that they not only support the increase in the minimum wage, but that they pursue other measures that would ease the burdens of low-income workers, such as the earned income tax credits that some people are trying to scale back. If you want to do something hands-on, talk to Steve Espinoza or Jan Juergens about how you might help with the backpack program in which our church participates. This program steps up where federal aid stops by feeding children on the weekend, providing them with backpacks filled with kid-friendly items such as rice and beans, instant noodles, peanut butter, macaroni and cheese, pasta, instant potatoes, cereal, granola bars, fruit cups. A simple yet meaningful thing to do. Labor Day, the first Monday in September, is a creation of the labor movement and is dedicated to the social and economic achievements of American workers. It constitutes a yearly national tribute to the contributions workers have made to the strength, prosperity, and well-being of our nation. And it's time our country recognizes the plight of workers in this country who do make a contribution, but are not given the respect, not provided the equity that all human beings deserve. Each person should be able to till their own field and there find the treasure of a dignified living. In the words of Richard Gilbert, we are not subject to the vague dispositions of some fateful, invisible hand of the market to determine our economic destiny. The beloved community of earth should be our ideal, transcending the reality in which we live. So may it be. Amen. Let's rise as we're willing or able and join our voices in singing our final hymn, number 140. Hail the glorious golden city. If we have any hope of transforming the world and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to step into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, loving enough to forgive ourselves and others. May we, as a people of faith, be granted the strength to be so bold, so brave, and so loving. Please be seated for the postlude. Please be advised there are some sign-up sheets just outside the door. I hope you'll look and sign up for those two things. Next week, Jennifer Dant will have the pulpit. I'll be here, but she'll be preaching, so I hope you'll come and see that. So now go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. Go in peace.